Call the meeting to order for the Board of County Commissioners, February 24th, 2020 at 6 o'clock. As always, we'll start off with invocation. It's Commissioner Mendenholster.
Thank you. On me, if you please. Our Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this day. We ask that you be with each person that is here tonight. We thank you for their interest in our governmental process. Father, now we ask that you go with us in this meeting. Guide us and lead us and direct us. And please give everyone that's here and all of our commissioners a safe journey back home. All of these things we ask in thy precious name. Amen.
Amen. Please continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, before we do the approval of the agenda, I've had a request on the discussion agenda. Item C, the policy for the Fire Service District, Fire Commission Youth Service District funds. Our Fire Marshal Scott Aaron has a prior engagement to attend. Is everybody okay with moving him to the top of that list?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. We'll now move on to our comments from our Commissioner and Manager, starting with Commissioner Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a couple subjects tonight. First of all, welcome everybody. It's good to see you here. We had a meeting just before this meeting between 4:30 and 5:30 today with some folks from Texas A&M University. And they were here because they awarded our hospital, local hospital, a grant. To give you kind of like the 30,000-foot view, what they're doing, I think they work with about 30 hospitals, and they are offering their services through this grant to assist our hospital in all facets of the operation, with advice and lessons learned from other hospitals on how to keep it open, for one thing, probably the most important thing. And I think they've been doing this for 2 years now, and the 30 hospitals they're working with, rural hospitals, none of them have closed, so that's a good thing. But they were here to gather information from the public and thoughts on our hospital and just get that kind of feedback as part of the process. But it was very useful. I think they're really going to be a major help as we form our hospital operations committee that we're getting ready to form, and try to make this hospital better, keep it open first of all, and then make it a better facility for providing services, not just up here in this area, but also in King and Pine Hall, as you're aware that they also do. So stay tuned for that, and maybe seeing some positive changes in the hospital based on the assistance we received from those folks. Got one other subject, I'm going to read it right quick. From what I'm hearing, excuse me, I'm still trying to get over something, I don't know what it was, but from what I'm hearing, I guess the primary election has again brought out the regular group of River Street ankle biters who often are late arrivals on the scene and feel a need to Monday morning quarterback the previous Board of County Commissioner decision to form a public-private type partnership with River Street to provide internet services to the county. A couple of those board members are here tonight, Jimmy and Mr. Booth out there, that were involved in that decision. Public-private partnerships of the type that we are doing with River Street are a pretty accepted business practices for local governments, or really for all level of governments, to do business and do it in a real efficient way. And it's very similar to the relationship that a public-private partnership type relationship that we've had with the hospital for, I guess, the last 20 years or so. I'm kind of tired of the previous commissioner board being second guessed, so I've decided to compile a detailed dossier. I'm going to post it on my blog to set the record straight on River Street, on that River Street decision that these two guys and the other commissioners made. It will show why Commissioner Walker, and I'll add Booth since he's here, and his fellow board members made the right decision. At the time they made the decision to do River Street, we had been beating our head against the wall trying to find options for internet, and we couldn't even get a meeting with the prime carriers to discuss the possibility of increasing service to unserved and underserved people that didn't have internet service. Most of the social media whining seems to be over the 20% funding match that was provided through a grant to sustain the project. It should be noted that the grant would not have even been required if the school board had been given credible information to make the right decision on River Street's initial bid for the school business 4 years ago. There will be more on that decision in my comprehensive dossier. Let me first just provide a few facts about River Street that the whiners on social media like to conveniently leave out of their post. Number one, River Street has invested the lion's share of $10 million of their own money in Stokes County's, along with Stokes County's $1.8 million 20% investment. Just for the record, I'll support a 20% match to any company who is willing to bring a quality internet expansion project to our students and other residents of the county. I would welcome an unsolicited proposal from any company that is willing to step up with a credible project. Number two, River Street's presence reduced the annual price of the school system's wide area network services by over half, from $400,000 to under $200,000 through simple competition. Number three, River Street reinvests the revenues they receive from Stokes County back into Stokes County internet expansion. Number four, River Street built a $500,000 customer service center and network hub in Danbury, which helped the town's budget and provided customers local access to customer service representatives. And then number five, as promised, River Street hired local people to staff their customer service and sales positions at their office in Danbury. With River Street's presence here, Stokes County finds itself in a uniquely positive position over all other rural counties in North Carolina except for Wilkes County. We have two co-ops who blanket our entire county with a network of state-of-the-art fiber optic cable. If you were to take, I was going to say, a turkey buzzard that had x-ray vision and fly it over the county that could see through the ground and see the cables under the ground, I probably should say a drone instead of a turkey buzzard, but if you took a drone with x-ray vision and looked over the county, you would see a major trunk network between the three municipalities, and then you would see branches going out to all the schools, which by definition covers the whole county because the schools are spread out over the county. And then if you went in the northwest part of the county, you would see that Surrey Communications has stepped up and increased their investment in the county with a lot of new fiber optic cable in that part of the county. The presence of these two co-ops will have Stokes County uniquely positioned when President Trump implements his infrastructure improvement plan. He has promised that in his plan will include internet expansion for rural communities, and in case you haven't noticed, President Trump tends to keep his promises. The scenario I described using a drone example tells me that because of the investments made by River Street and Surrey Communications in our county, we now have shovel-ready projects available for further internet expansion. This should go a long way in helping us grab an early share of any infrastructure funding from President Trump or any other source of funds that become available for this purpose. My bottom line, we should be open to all opportunities and technological advances to expand the internet, but more importantly, we should strongly support and not nitpick our two co-ops who have given us a leg up over other rural counties for internet expansion through their significant financial investments in our county. It's unfortunate that large-scale internet expansion does not provide instant gratification, but the cost alone dictates that these type of projects cannot be completed overnight. That being said, it's my opinion that we should continue to pursue every opportunity for internet and approach it on one customer at a time until we get this entire county connected to everyone who wants the service. That's my thoughts on internet for tonight, and when I do my dossier, I'm gonna get James and Jimmy to approve it before I publish it for accuracy. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Walker?
Very interesting. Brings back memories. And if my memory is correct, I think there was a unanimous vote of the previous board to support River Street in their venture here in the county. I don't remember any dissenting votes. Couple of things is we sometimes in our county, for some reason, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to figure it out, may never be, we sometimes have trouble working together. And as Commissioner Morris described, and I don't want to go back and saw sawdust, but the school board really could have been an asset toward getting internet in our county, high-speed broadband access, I think it's been suggested that we call it, if certain things had been done differently. For example, River Street, to their credit, I think Commissioner Morris offered to run fiber optic cable to every school, gratis, just to be ready for the time came, when the time came to start providing a service to the schools. They weren't allowed to do that. Haven't quite figured that out yet, but you know, sometimes things happen that way, and like I said, I'm not smart enough, probably never will be, to figure out how all sorts of things work, but that was a mystery. Now, it seems to have self-corrected to some extent, because I think, as you mentioned, Commissioner Morris, I think River Street is the current provider of internet service to the schools, which is good. One thing, I'm going to switch subjects. Commissioner Morris talked quite a bit about River Street, and if he's not careful, he'll be accused of talking like Jimmy Walker, Commissioner Walker. But hospital, has there ever been, I know one thing we're looking at this evening on our agenda is feasibility or a study for a wellness center, which has been talked about for a pretty good while, and I know there's a lot of public interest in the Meadows area, which would serve Walnut Cove and this part of the county, and would keep people from having to make a rather long, timely drive to King if they want to work out in a Y-type facility, a community or wellness center type facility. And we're going to be talking about that feasibility study, but has there ever been a feasibility study done for the hospital to see what kind of services would be most appropriate for this area? I'm not aware of one. So I'm just wondering if this might be the type of thing the folks from Texas A&M, who are the folks that will be working with us with a grant, will be doing. Will they find out what kind of services the people in this area really want and need from their hospital, and maybe can fine-tune it to better address those wants and needs? Very interested, very encouraged that this type of work has been done. 30 for 30, as Commissioner Morris mentioned, they're working with, I think he said currently 30 hospitals, and 9 have closed. That's quite impressive. That's good. One more thing, Mr. Chairman, I'll pass it along.
Thank you, sir.
If anyone wonders why I don't get caught up in Facebook or what do you call it, social media, get kind of in the middle of a lot of things that are going on in our county, it's by personal choice. I just don't care to be involved the way some things are happening. And the safest thing I've found for me is just to not participate, not be involved. So the reason I'm saying that, if someone wants to get word to me and point out something, get their thoughts across, probably the best way to do it is email or still the old phone. I like to talk to people, so if anyone wants to call and discuss any item that involves our county in any way, I'll be glad to take the time to talk with them and always try to return calls. But if you're wondering about where's Jimmy Walker and all this Commissioner Walker and all this stuff is going on the internet, I do hear about some of it. I'm not involved and probably will not be. Mr. Chairman, I want to stop there. I probably said too much already. What do you think?
Sir. Smart man. Mr. Young?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Looks like I was labeled an idiot when I was on the school board. Looks like I'm not going to remove that tag from myself for this whole River Street thing. So, but I want to clear one thing up. When I was on the school board and River Street put in a bid the first time, it was a substantial amount of money, the difference. We actually put it out for rebid, which is against all things that you're supposed to do as a board, and didn't receive a bid the second time around from River Street. This time, fortunately, they rebid it. Hopefully, we're going to move our county forward. But that was the reason behind it then. I don't know why we have to dig up old bones, but anyway, that's where we're at, and unfortunate. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Mendenhall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to look out into the audience and say thank you for being here tonight. For you to come out on a rainy night like tonight, you must really want to be here. And I say thank you for wanting to be a part of the governmental process. And thank you for everything you do for our county. We had a forum yesterday in Francisco, and I thought it went real well. And for all the people that came out to that, thank you. And for anyone that is live streaming on YouTube tonight, and you were there, I also want to say thank you to them. And just continue to be part of our process, continue to come to our meetings, and I think you will be able to stay up to date on everything that's going on in Stokes County. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. As y'all know, most of the time I'll get out there in the crowd and shake your hand. Thank you for coming. I'm sitting in my seat right now because I hurt my back this Saturday, so I'm trying to take it a little easy. My wife didn't even want me to come tonight. But, I'm just going to touch just a second on what Commissioner Morrison brought about River Street. I'm not sure what he's hearing or seeing on Facebook. The main thing I'm hearing and seeing is people just want an update of what's going on. They know the $1.8 million went out there to it. I, for one, can't tell them because I think we've been trying close to 6 months to get a representative here just to talk to us and give us an update, and I think that's just the biggest thing everybody's wanting. And I know that's one thing this board right here wants, because I'm not sure that anybody here on this board now can tell me how many customers they got or anything else. Yeah, we want it. We want it here. We need it. But just give us an update what's going on. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing right now. So not really seeing a whole lot of negative besides everybody saying, look, we just want to know what's going on. So with that, I'll pass it on to our manager, Mr. Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to give the teachers across our county a very big hand of applause. Last Monday, I attended a school board meeting, and they recognized teachers all across our county from all of our schools for their recognition in higher education and achieving the national certificate from their board on this. So my applause and hats off to all of the teachers and their hard work they're doing. Also, I attended the public comments that the EDQ had, the environmental quality control concerning our coal ash over in Duke Power, and how they are ready to move forward in selling and fixing these sites in a manner that is a lot safer for our citizens here in Stokes County. And I have this, I'd love to pass out to the board members for information to read on. I told you I would keep you updated on that, and that's the last thing that's been going on. But it's just taking public comments and making sure the community is involved in how this closure is being taken place with Duke Power and the lawsuit that they were under. That's it, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to welcome everyone here, and I hope everyone's having a good night.
All right, thank you so much. We'll move on now to our public comments. With this, if you don't mind, when we call you up, just state your name, your address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll start with Mr. James Booth. Good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you. James Booth, 1045 Moore's Knob View Road, Westfield, NC, 27053. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, Assistant County Manager, and Clerk. Thank you for having me tonight, be able to speak before you. It's time for the Farmers Appreciation again. So I'm here tonight on a resolution proclaiming Farmers Appreciation Day in Stokes County. So I have the resolution here in front of me, and I know y'all going to take this up on action tonight, but I just want to read this resolution, if I could. It says, whereas the County of Stokes, the Stokes Soil and Water Conservation District, the Cooperative Extension, Farmers Service Agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and the North Carolina Forest Service desire to host the Farmers Appreciation Day to recognize the contribution of our farmers to Stokes County, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners recognize that the county's farmers contribute greatly to the Stokes County economic base, and whereas the board believes that all county citizens benefit from the farming activities in some manner, and whereas the board agrees that a farmer's appreciation would show our county's support for the existing farming community and honor past activities that have contributed so much to the culture and heritage of Stokes County. And whereas the board recognizes and appreciates the local business wherein the county that provides funding for a barbecue and chicken dinner with live entertainment to be held at North Stokes High School with all Stokes County citizens invited. Now therefore be it resolved that the Stokes County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim Thursday, March the 26th, 2020 as Farmers Appreciation Day in Stokes County and extend the appreciation and gratitude to the county farmers for their many contributions to Stokes County. And I appreciate y'all getting ready to adopt this resolution. And on your action agenda, this will be the 22nd event that we've had for Farmers Appreciation. Usually it's anywhere from 400 to 600 people that attend, have a good time eating. I mentioned the business in Stokes County. It's about 25 or 30 business in Stokes County that sponsors this event. And the chairman, his company has sponsored this event for several years, and I appreciate your sponsorship of this.
Yes,
and we hosted at Soil and Water. Our supervisors, our 5 supervisor board, and all the other farm agency. We're there. We get the food there, but we serve the food and everything. This cuts down on the expense of putting on this event, so we're able to do it every year, and we're glad to do it. So I'd like to hand this out to you so you can get your reminder. Thank you very much. Thank you. Expect this to go.
I got it.
You didn't get one?
I got it.
Oh, you got one. Oh, you had it
Passing
down.
them down.
Thank you. I'll let you out. There you go. Thank you very much.
Mr. Booth, from all of us, it seems like a lot of years you kind of hid this thing up, and we appreciate you taking your time and organizing this and getting together.
20 years. It's been 20 years I've been a supervisor.
Thank you so much for your hard time, hard work, and everything into it.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Okay, we'll move on now to Glen Bosworth. All right, thank you for that.
Yeah, if you think that's not a local name, you'd probably be right. But my name's Glen Bosworth. I'm a resident of Stokes County. I live at 1150 Simmons Road up here, and where I have a Westfield address. And a couple days ago, it came to my attention that you were considering a moratorium on solar farms, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and state my opinion on that. My personal belief is that solar energy is a very important of our energy future, and I think it's a good source of revenue for the county, and especially in a rural county, it can be a big help. And I respect the need for guidelines and everything, but I feel like a solar moratorium, especially for 3 years, is excessive and probably not needed. And I know it's in the, you guys are considering this, and you got somebody coming to speak about it today, and I'm interested to hear what that's all about. And I read it all online and everything, but just wanted to come and say that I would be opposed to a moratorium. And thank you for your time.
Sir, thank you. Up next, we have EA Buddy Tim.
Good evening. I'm EA Buddy Tim, P.O. Box 573, Walnut Cove. My concern is over the effect of what a lot of solar panel farms could have on the environment of our county. I've been down to Pinehurst lately, and I've seen large solar panel farms as I drove by. I could not help noticing the large area of dead brown grass and vegetation under the solar panels. It cannot be good for that large an area of ground to be sprayed with chemicals to kill the grass and weeds. Does anybody think it would be safe to grow their own tomatoes or other garden vegetables nearby? What does it do to the groundwater and the water that the field animals drink from? I think the county should look into the effects of what a lot of solar panel farms could have on the county. If a lot of solar panel farms are safe, fine. If they could pollute our streams and farmland, we should pay a lot of attention to that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Up next, we have Mr. Robert Knight.
Robert Knight, 1220 Hubby Moore Road, Lawson Valencia, 27022. I'm actually here to speak on the answers to the questions Mr. Morris had received back from, I guess it would be in Lick Creek Solar, who's looking to take on the project down here in Walnut Cove. I've read over the answers given for Commissioner Moore's questions, and one that stands out to me as a farmer is the answer to question 19. Commissioner Morris's question, herbicide application, will serious issues be created? The answer A, licensed applicators will apply the herbicide. I have a question for that myself. Will the licensed applicator be an employee of Lick Creek Solar, or will they work for another LLC? B, there will be a limited use and only in certain areas. The more they limit the use, the larger the weeds and the harder to kill them becomes. This requires more water for coverage and a stronger solution to be effective. The tall dead weeds shown in the Stokes News, October 2nd, 2019 edition of the other solar power plant, I don't consider them a solar farm. The other solar power plant we have in the county is an example of this practice. It's massive growth. C, the total herbicide is much less than used in agriculture operations. This is the one that really sparked me up to want to speak. I've got a lot of other stuff I could bring up, but I've got 3 minutes. There's no way this is true. It would be a stretch even if you considered even the grass spaces between the rows of panels in the acre. I use 15 gallons of water, 2 pints per acre of Roundup, only 2 times a year. That's 64 ounces on 43,560 square foot in a year. The label rate for Roundup used in hand application is 4 ounces per gallon of water. The gallons of water per acre depends on the applicator. The label rate of coverage is 300 to 1,000 square feet per gallon of solution. Using the median concentration, this comes to 175 to 580 ounces per 43,560 square foot in one application. If it's only sprayed 4 times a year, in a year, at the higher rate, that's 2,320 ounces per acre. That's 36 times more than I apply in a much more controlled environment. I think the issue here with the moratorium, I'm aware that the state is currently putting together a board of people from across the state, from different backgrounds, that are working to come up with some sort of standards. I think that it would be reasonable for moratorium to at least put a pause to growth until we can see what these standards by a broad range of people are. So I'm sure this is not going to be a one-time meeting on this. We've got a lot of stuff to go over, but I'm happy to pull together what I can, because it is difficult to dig up information on a lot of this, because it is a new project. And I think my concern is more of the large scale, not the 5-10 acre plots or something that people put in their yards. It's these hundreds of acres. I worry about the effect on local economic impact, and me as a farmer having to compete with less farmland to farm. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Up next, we have Ms. Ramona Young.
Good evening, Board, Commissioners, and Town Manager, County Managers. I want to speak on 2 subjects to do with the moratorium and to do with waste problems from solar. I have an article that covers wind as well, but I will not touch on that very much. First of all, I do support a moratorium, and I support a longer than 3-year moratorium, seeing that the rules for decommissioning by this commission that was set up by legislation will have to come up for those rules by the January 1, 2022. I don't think that's enough time to come to any kind of results of what we would have from solar. The solar actual development that we have in the Walnut Cove area, in Walnut Cove and in the county, but it's a very large piece of land that's going to be developed. And I am very concerned about the runoff that will be from those chemicals that will be used. We were not told, honestly, that they would be using chemicals, but from the questions that Commissioner Morris raised, it uncovered the fact that they will be using chemicals on the land in Walnut Cove and outside of Walnut Cove in the county. And that really upset me. And so I am very concerned over that, and I would support a 6-year moratorium, because I really think 3 years is not enough time to really come to any kind of conclusion on this. The other aspect is to do with how we decommission these things, because right now, as it goes, the legislation that was passed in order to commission this group to come up with rules for decommissioning, they were not allowed to rule on the actual how the waste of solar panels were to be treated. They can now fill our landfills, okay? And that to me is bad. There are studies that have continued to say that we still have chemical waste components from these solar panels, such as gallium, arsenide, tellurium, silver, crystalline silicon, lead, cadmium, and heavy earth materials. And these facilities where they are to be decommissioned, they require an enormous expanse of land. They take up prime farmland, and they stress the state's agricultural ecosystem. So there's the presence of Gen X and related compounds in solar components. So I just want to close by saying we really need to keep an eye on this commission that's putting together these guidelines. And I think we need to just call a halt to any further solar panels in this county. I don't think we can take all that kind of expense, should it be put back on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Mr. John Hartman.
Good evening. My name is John Hartman. I live at 1065 Ernest Nelson Road in Danbury. Greetings, fellow citizens. I have lived just outside of Danbury for about 32 years. On the roof of my well house are 6 photovoltaic solar panels. Comprising an area of about 10 by 11 feet, they provide enough electricity to power my household lights, pump water for my home, livestock, and garden, and run household appliances, including a microwave oven. I can operate handheld and stationary power tools even on overcast days. The leftover solar generated electricity warms our water in a conventional hot water heater. Batteries store electricity to get us through the night. After a few years of being plugged into the sun, and yes, a few glitches along the way, I remain amazed at how well this system works. This is a relatively clean, completely renewable form of energy. All technology comes at a cost. There is no such thing as free energy. But plugging into the sun nearly eliminates emissions and pollution. Unlike coal, oil, and gas, our planet will never run out of sunlight. Solar energy is less geopolitically unstable than fossil fuel dependence. After all, the sun shines on everyone. Sunlight does not have to be mined, drilled, or fracked from the earth, which are also destructive and polluting enterprises. The jobs lost by ending these extractive methods will be more than replaced by manufacturing and installing solar equipment. Decommissioning and recycling these components as they age out will also provide employment. Energy independence is a popular political theme these days. But what does this really mean? Proponents of solar and other less polluting, more sustainable energy technologies often say these are undependable. Friends, what is more dependable than the sun? To the criticism that the sun does not shine at night and that there are cloudy days, I say that's what batteries are for. And as with solar components, battery technology is improving all the time. The promise of solar energy does not stop with electricity for homes, factories, and businesses. The automotive industry is turning out more electric vehicles every year. This is significant given the current environmental impacts of transportation. But whether the next generation of cars and trucks will run cleaner by being electric depends on how we make our electricity. If we are still burning coal, oil, and gas to do it, there won't be much, if any, benefit. For too long, our economy, society, and politics have been held hostage by the power of the fossil fuels industry. For government at any level to continue to pander to the short-term financial interests of a few corporations is unconscionable. If the town chooses to invest in a clean energy future, let it. Government exists not to prop up obsolete technologies, but to promote a brighter future for all citizens. Please don't block the light, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we have Ms. Kay Ritchie.
Commissioners, County Manager, citizens. My name is Kay Ritchie. I live at 1065 Ernest Nelson Road in Danbury. Where you heard, a 19th century log cabin, 3 years power has been provided by a photovoltaic system with battery storage for nighttime and other low input times and a generator backup. Our house also has a sunroom that uses passive solar to help heat and cool the house. I experienced that solar works. I also recognize that the use of a solar system needs careful planning and consideration. We considered and installed our system with extra safeguards for high wind situations, decommissioning components. We have batteries contained in protected boxes and replace and recycle those as needed. I understand that counties need to come up with reasonable guidelines. I also know that North Carolina this summer enacted legislation that requires that the Department of Environmental Quality come up with regulations for solar farms by January of 2022, well within the proposed 3-year moratorium, which I think is excessive. I do appreciate that our county commissioners are concerned about the potential environmental and public health impacts of energy production. We're all too aware of the negative impacts of energy production as we have worked to lessen the impact of the Blues Creek Power Station and the coal ash residue. I appreciate Mr. Oakley being at the meeting in Walnut Cove last week and bringing that information back. I do have to state that that's the first time I've seen interest from the county at any of those meetings. I also recognize the need to be concerned about herbicide application, but guidelines do exist, and our farmers do go by those applications, and a licensed applicator would also need to. So I don't see how saying the license is not good enough for someone at a solar farm, while it is good enough for our agricultural farmers. There are also other methods for dealing with excessive growth. It doesn't have to be herbicide applications. That's a supplement to mowing and using low growth plants in solar farms. So while I support the idea of communities exercising caution in the expansion of solar farms, I think as policies are being designed and put in place, solar farms can be continued to be considered on a case-by-case basis. I do not see the need to proverbially throw the baby out with the bathwater and impose a moratorium. Rather, I think the county should be proactively seeking to help identify the best places for possible solar farms. It occurred to me the Whole Rails Brook Cove site would be a strong possibility for such a site. I think rather than getting caught up into ideologically motivated positions, we can truly look at what's best for our county and for its citizens.
Thank you. All right, our last speaker tonight, Stephen Pullen.
Hello, my name's Stephen Pullen. I'm the Dan River Keeper. I live at 790 Stone Mountain Road in Stoneville. Mr. Mendenhall, thank you for opening many doors for me on the way up here this morning in the rain. I got several calls from folks in Stokes County. I don't live here myself, but I spend a lot of time here, especially on the waterways. They're worried about Gen X chemical processes involved with solar panels. They shared a lot of different information from some journals in North Carolina. And if you haven't met me or don't know me before, I have a reputation for my candor being very bitter or sharp tongue, depending on who you talk to. So I say it like it is. If there's an issue with something that was going to go into the water, I'd be highly against it. Gen X is not a chemical. It's more of a chemical process that can, down the road, turn to these other chemicals, like we see PFAS going on in the Cape River. PFAS, PFOS, these acrylic alkaloids. There's been a lot of misinformation shared about their relationship with the films and solar panels. They don't exist. It's been a lot of discrepancies, and there's a lot of information online that is just not true. I agree with a lot of all the speakers tonight. You have some really good folks that are very well informed. You don't want someone coming in that's going to pour glyphosate, Roundup. It's a terrible chemical. You don't want it in your waterways. You don't want someone that's going to come in and mow down all the grass. If you have a choice, again, case by case would be much better than a moratorium, in my opinion. If it's done correctly, if it's done sustainable, it can actually replenish the soil. It's very regenerative. If you have native species like phlox, clover, you let a lot of these species come back. Stokes County is home to one of 2 counties in the country that has certain types of bittergrass. Most of those have been killed over and further extinct because of regenerative farming. So it is an opportunity if it's done correctly, and just having a solar installation on your farm does not rule out the potential for having any kind of vegetables or cattle A lot of folks that I represent in Pennsylvania County and Virginia and Rockingham County, where I live in North Carolina, have goats that keep native seedlings down. They don't mow, they don't spray. There's no need to clean solar panels for the most part. You know, Berg will take care of that. They're pretty productive and efficient, even if they're dirty. There's a really good benefit, and if you're going to have someone that wants to come in and provide some kind of sustainable income for farmers, you know how the story goes. You know, people are retiring. The good farmers that built this country are retiring, so they have all these kids that the land's left to. The kids can say, I don't want to do that. It's too hard. They're smarter than Robert over here. They don't want to get into it. But they can sell off to foreign investment. They can sell off to someone out of state, or you can open up new avenues. You can have solar. Providing nearby municipalities like Greensboro and Winston that are wanting to go completely solar powered by 2020, 2030, the dates are pushing forward because there's no one that's local that can provide it. So it's a big economic opportunity, not just for the farmers, but for the county through taxation. It's highly recyclable, that they don't get dumped in landfills anymore. You do what you want. I just appreciate the opportunity, and you have a speaker that came out tonight. That's better than a lot of counties I've spoken to have done. I think you're going about it the right way, and I just want to let you know that Gen X is no concern. It's actually better for the watershed if they have a regenerative solar farm because we don't get so much storm water to increase turbidity of Dan River and all the creeks that go through. But again, I appreciate it. I know I'm probably out of time. April 11th through the 18th. We don't have a creek week in this part of the state. Dan River, as you know, brings plenty of tourists. It gets a lot of bad rap, and that's all you ever hear in the news. So our organization has started Creek Week. It's not an event, it's more of an idea to get people outside, involved, hike, bike, swim, do water quality tests, do a cleanup, and I'll send you all some information. Please be looking for it, but at your next meeting, if you would consider adopting Creek Week of April 11th through the 18th. We have some things planned with South Stokes. We'd like to do a Moorcock Park. And we would like to have you guys on board.
Thank you, sir. If you wouldn't mind sending that information to the clerk of the board right here to us, she can get you all the contact info to get this over. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second with just one question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Julia, what's the, on that budget amendment about moving dirt, what's that about? The one where you're moving dirt, you got some part-time people to move dirt, or?
Yeah, Mark wants to hire a person to move some dirt up here over to
Where's our county attorney at?
Or to take care of the problems they've had over there that they need to fix up? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On the information agenda, we have our Friends of Stokes Shelter.
Gentlemen, lady, I have a one-sheet information that I've shared in your packets, and I'm just going to go through and explain what it's trying to say, and then I gather you can ask your questions. The financial part at the top is a four-column presentation, and the first column is an exact duplication of the budget material we went through in November. What I've done is basically collapse some of the details, so what you're seeing is basically a summary of that event. If you look at the first column that talks about the original budget that we had for our organization that would come through June of 2020, you can see the county assistance line there. That's that famous $49,602, which we divided into a monthly, thanks to Jamie's idea, into a monthly check. So that first column represents where we started back in November, that got approved in December. The next column then is what we view now as our current budget. We take an actual from basically from November through January of the actual numbers, and then we projected out the rest of your fiscal year. In the second column, third column then is another year, and then the fourth column is the third year. So basically, what we're looking at right now is we're looking at, through the end of your fiscal year in June, we will have a surplus in our budget. That's the, down at the bottom, you can see a surplus number of $27,208. So I'll go back and explain all about that. But to finish out that discussion about surplus, so through June of this 2020, we'll have a surplus. And then as we project and think about what's going to happen in the following 12 months, it looks like we're going to end up with a deficit of $35,000. And then the following year, it looks like our deficit will decrease to about $19,000. That's just our current view. And that's our best guess of what we think we can get done at this point. So just to go through an update of where we're at, which is what you wanted to hear from tonight. The first point is we've been very frugal. We've done a very good job, I think, of minimizing all the purchases. We got together and said, okay, what do we absolutely have to get open? What's our minimum? What can we get done? We decided we could take on doing our own payroll, so 2 of the board members are doing the payroll and the payroll taxes, so we're going to have to do that. We got a late start on hiring, which is kind of good because it delays some of the payments, but it just means we have a late start on getting open. We've delayed our benefits package to 6 months of service, so that pushes out some of the money. So we've got agreement that that will be what we're going to go through with. So again, we've been very frugal, we've pushed some things out, and the other thing that's happened is there's been a tremendous amount of community support. We've got an Amazon wish list, and other people have just driven by, walked in, and brought their kids, brought some food, gave us some towels, and we've got so many wonderful gifts that the community has come through. There's 30 or 40 people that have just helped us out amazingly. So it has been it's been like Christmas around our place every day. Watch any of the Facebook posts, and we'll have some great stories. So anyway, we've had a lot of community donations, and that means that, again, we've been able to save some money. So that's the good news. Our final official inspection is Wednesday morning, so we could be open on Thursday. So we are ready to go. We expect to be open maybe this coming Thursday, and we'll see where it goes from there. We've got 1 full-time person. We've got a 20-hour contract person on board. So we're fully staffed. We've got a volunteer group that are going to fill in the other slots, and we're ready to go.
All right. I'll start with questions, comments, starting with Commissioner Mendenhall.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you so much for the breakdown. This is so helpful. And I just want to thank you also for the expediency that y'all have moved with this. And to hear that your final inspection may be Wednesday and you may be open on Thursday is great news. And just want to say congratulations. And I know you're excited. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Young.
Yeah, thank you for the report. This is exactly what I was hoping to kind of see where we were at. Again, congratulations. You guys seem to be moving along well, and hopefully we can see this to fruition, and hopefully you'll be open on Thursday.
Yep.
Animals in the facility is soon thereafter.
Pardon me?
You'll have animals in the
Oh, yeah,
facility
open
soon
means
thereafter. Yeah.
go get some.
Okay, great. Congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Wolver.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here to share the good news with us. And it took a while in coming about, but finally the time is here. And proud for you folks, all the effort you put into it and work, and I know it's had its challenges, and I've been involved with some of those challenges along the way. But finally, things are coming together, and very optimistic at this point that a good service is going to be provided in our county. Pets are important to people, and for folks to have a good facility to come and choose a new pet or choose a pet, I think that's a real plus for our county and a benefit to our citizens and to the area. So like the other commissioners have also said, and probably Commissioner Morris might say when it's his turn, I commend you for a job well done. And I think it's a very positive thing for our county, and I always like to see positive things happen in our county. It helps move us forward, helps keep us going in a good direction. Thanks again for being here, and thanks again for all you've done and all the others have done. And I'm looking forward to that time when everything's up and going and working like we hope it will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Morris?
I commend you for a job well done, just like you said I would say. I a couple questions on the budget sheets that you gave us. You're showing in your 2021 budget $11,000. That's fundraising events revenue you're going to get, right? And then down below it takes $2,000 in expenses to get that $11,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when you get to the totals at the bottom, you've got a surplus this year, and then not a surplus the following year, a little bit the other way. So like from 27 to 35, which is a pretty small difference. But would you envision doing any kind of budget request for this year to make up that little difference, or you guys think that'll kind of work it out in the wash or whatever for the 2021 budget?
We know we're going to run out of money. We know we've got to be in the perpetual fundraising mode because we don't make any money with adoption fees. Basically, that's a net zero. So basically, we are a donation and grant organization. Our best ideas may or may not come to fruition. So yes, if there's a possible funding source, would be lovely to get one. So yes, if we can be allowed to submit a budget request, we'd be glad to do that.
You can always submit one. You just don't guarantee.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I just wanted to give you a view that we're going to get open. We don't really know how we're going to stay open 12 months from now, but we have a budget and we're going to keep going. And if that's one of the ways we can stabilize our budget is by getting some temporary assistance for another fiscal year, that would be greatly appreciated. That would help us.
I guess we can just play that by ear based on your actual experience once you get going, and that'll really help you to get a more finite budget based on what your actual expenses and revenues are.
Yes, we've only really had 1 month in January of some actual expenses.
One last quick question. You go from 11,000 revenue up to 20,000 the following year in fundraising. Is any particular reason you're just going to turn up the gain to do more fundraising that second year, or is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, that one. We've got lots of ideas, but it requires fundraising expertise, fundraising talent, which we haven't identified. We've been trying to hire people to help us with fundraising, and we're too small for anybody who's good at it. So if we were a large organization, they'd be glad to take our money, but we're too small, so nobody's interested. So it's kind of a tough one. So we haven't figured out how to get to 20,000, but
that's your goal, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad to see that you're setting goals to try to get more and more to kind of help this out. My biggest question, Commissioner Morris didn't ask it to you, just kind of what you was projecting. Do you think you guys can kind of take it from here after the county assistance is over with, but still maybe just a little bit doubt right there?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're feeling. We're feeling like we can get open. We're good through June, yay.
but I don't know about the end of the year, so we're hoping to, but we just don't know.
Right. And of course, that's one of them unforeseen futures. We just don't know what's going to happen. But I will say this, I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope it's a success. I'm glad we was able to help you out with getting it going. Would you mind coming giving us another update next month?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. I'd kind of like to see how things are going when y'all first open the doors.
Okay,
All right.
good.
Thank you.
Will do.
All right, we'll move on to a discussion agenda. There's a change at the beginning. We're going to go ahead and get our Fire Marshal, Mr. Scott Aaron, up here.
Good evening. Thank y'all for having me and moving me up. I've got a group of about 20 firemen who are chomping at the bit, wanting to take an exam right now. So they're waiting on me. What I have here is the policy that's the agreement between the Firemen's Association and the county commissioners that guide the fire commissioners on how to do the service district tax budgets for the fire departments. As you know, the last 2 years they've operated on an amended document. They finally got everything the way that they seemed to want it, and they voted on it. We sent it to Ty for review so that he would make sure that everything was written the way that it should be and acceptable to turn into you guys. So this is the amended document that y'all have, and they would like to get this voted on to be able to use as the process to do the fire department budgets.
Okay, I'll open it up for questions and comments. Start with Commissioner Yance.
Thank you for presenting this. Are there any major changes? I kind of read through it, but I don't see anything highlighting what the major changes would have been from our previous. There's nothing that stands out.
The only thing that they changed was in the previous document, it said that each fire department would submit a line, or the fire departments will submit a line-by-line budget, and it would be changed by line. So they took out the line-by-line stuff so that the fire commissioners aren't saying this fire department can't buy 5 sets of turnout gear. It's putting the decision-making back on the firemen or the fire department and the board of directors on what items they buy. But the money is still controlled by the fire commissioners and the county.
And they're going to start meeting this week?
Yes, sir.
This year? Okay. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Walker?
Thank you. Scott, there's, I think, a formula, an algorithm, or some set process for how the funds are allocated to the various fire departments. Refresh my memory, please, on how you recall that particular process will be working.
Well, I hate that Robert left.
I do too. He was kind of the originator for the concept. And
What we do is we take the total debt load of all the fire departments in the county and take that off the top and put it over here to the side, and then go through and base the money that they get on the number of calls they run, and everybody gets the same amount at one point, and then the rest of it's based on the call volume, and then you take their debt and put it back in. So then that creates what their budget will be. So they'll have an operating budget. But we take their debt load out to begin with, so we know that all the county debt load for the fire departments are paid. And then the money's divided up from there, and then their debt's put back into it.
now, from your view or your perspective, how well is that working? I know you can't please everybody all the time. That's how things are in dreams, but not reality. So how do you see that process working from any feedback you're aware of?
This is a lot better process than what we've done in the past with trying to tell a fire department, you can't buy this or you can't buy that. It gives them more of an opportunity to manage their own money. It works better. There is some tweaking with numbers as far as, you know, right now we're basing the call volume on 0.333%. If you change that to 0.334, it can make that number go up or down. So there's tweaking in there as the commissioners start seeing changes in the revenues and stuff that are coming in. So there is room to manage that money.
But overall, it sounds like things are working at least fairly smoothly, and that's encouraging.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Morris?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mendenhall? Scott, as far as the call volume, and who's getting a high, who's getting a low?
What we do is we request communications on what each fire department has as their call volume. And we, instead of doing it, basing it on a 1 year, because you could have 1 year that maybe runs up. So we base it on a 5-year average. So that, you know, if you do have a call volume of 1 year, or maybe a fire department doesn't run as many calls 1 year, so that it's not taking such a hit. So we base it on a 5-year average.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and let you get, if there ain't no more questions or comments. All right, we'll go ahead and let you take off to your class. Good luck with it.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Yes, sir, you too. Yes. Action. All right. All right, we'll move on now to proposal for the MOE funds for 2021. We have our DSS Director, Ms. Stacey Ames.
Good evening. What you have in your packet is the proposal for MOE funding for 2021. Tried to spell out everything for you as simply as I could. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Okay, I'll start now with Commissioner Walker.
I'm still looking it over. How about coming back to me and letting Commissioner Morris have a shot at it?
All right, that's fine. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Stacy, this is really well laid out with the justifications and everything, and I only had one question, if you happen to know it, is on that, there's a Wavetti contract in there to transport folks that are down at the Stokes Opportunity Center. Who's that contract with? Who is Wavetti contracting with to do that? Do you happen to know?
It's their van service.
Okay, but is the contract with the county to do that, or is it with somebody else?
I'm assuming it's with the Opportunity Center, with the Opportunity Center and Wavetti.
It's directly with the Opportunity Center. Okay.
And they haven't utilized all this money either, every year. Yeah, so.
Who specifically would that be at the Opportunity Center? Do they have a board? I forgot.
I would have to contact somebody at Monarch to try to find that out.
Well, it may be, is it with Monarch maybe the contract then?
I'm sure it would be Monarch.
Oh, Monarch.
But Monarch operates the Opportunity Center.
Okay, good. That answers my question then. That's the only question I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Mendenhall?
Now, I've looked over this and actually was just in a meeting not long ago, and we had discussions on many of the different items. I used to serve on the Cardinal Advisory Group when Mr. Emmons was chairman, and also had a meeting with the Stokes Partnership for Children where we had insight in different groups there. I've looked over it. Stacy, you've done a good job breaking this down. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Yance?
No, valuable information here. I was looking and there's just a few little things, but nothing that stands out that I have anything on now.
Okay. Commissioner Walker?
Thank you, sir. A little more ready now. Stacy, sometimes there's a surplus built in somehow. Somehow over the past few years, we've had a surplus at times. I'm not seeing any surplus this year unless I missed it. We've allocated all the funds and
We allocate it every year.
it's just not spent. Right. So this is pretty much like we've been doing from year to year. I'm not noticing things that are very different, so.
It is very similar. One thing you should notice that should beat you is we've given money to the folks at the JCPC table.
Good. I've been kind of a champion for their cause. I remember when Commissioner Booth served on that committee, and I kind of took his place, I guess, and continuing to represent the commissioners there, but one thing that has caught my attention, and you've referred to it, is it seems to me because what they do is so important, it is proactive instead of reactive. A lot of those funds are going toward helping potentially troubled youth have more stability in their lives, have their resources that these folks need at a particular time in their life. And if they don't get certain resources, they end up on the other end, detention and whatever goes along with that, which is much, much more costly. So I look at the JCPC, and I'll get off my soapbox, I promise, but I look at the JCPC, Juvenile Crime Prevention, as actually potentially saving money because it's working to keep young folks out of trouble to whatever extent that's possible. So yes, I have been championing their cause and hoping for more funds for a while. Anything else that, as you prepared this, you noticed or it's different from what we might expect to see or different from what we have been seeing?
No, not really different. I will tell you that the monies allocated for transportation of folks who don't have Medicaid to get to substance abuse or mental health treatment has been a phenomenal thing for these folks to ensure that they go to these appointments, because without Medicaid, a lot of times they won't go.
Right.
So that has been very helpful. The MedAssist event this year will be the 4th year for that. The very first year Cardinal paid for it. You guys have paid for it the last 3 years. In 2018, we served 497 people. In 2019, we served 863 people.
Well,
so
quite an increase.
It's moving on up there. And the next one is scheduled for May 2nd at Poplar Springs Church of Christ. So, and it's for anybody. We can all go through the line and get free over-the-counter medicine. So it's open to anybody in the county.
Right.
And then the Narcan kits, just want to make you aware that I didn't put this in there, but we provide those to our social workers as well, because they're out here in the field and they have to deal with the same thing our first responders have to deal with. And the lock boxes, we provide those to all our foster parents, because that's a need as well. So just a little extra tidbits.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I gotta say, even though it's a sad thing, it's a good thing to hear they get the Narcan kits in there in case they come across a situation and have to use it. Besides what you got here, it looks like you put a lot of time into it. I have absolutely no questions for it. You and your staff have done a great job presenting this to us. Thank you.
I would request that this be on the action agenda for approval at the next meeting.
At the next meeting, all right? We'll do it for you. Thank you. Before we move on to our next one, our clerk's asked for just a quick break to get the TV screens brought back up, so we'll take a break about 5-10 minutes and we'll resume.
You can get up.
If I can. I'll call the meeting back to order. Go ahead and continue on with our discussion agenda on item B, the proposed solar farm resolution and presentation by Mr. Isaac Panzarella. Is that right?
That's precisely right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, Chairman Nicholson and Commissioners. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come here and speak to you today. My name is Isaac Panzarella, and I'm a licensed professional engineer here in the state of North Carolina. I reside at 232 Glasscock Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. I work at NC State University at the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. I've been there 9 years. It'll be 10 years in May. I have a background in designing all types of green building systems, but also solar energy and other systems. So I'm here to talk to you today. Well, let's see. The Clean Energy Technology Center, just a little bit about that first. We were created in 1988 as a resource for renewable energy programs, training, technical assistance, and research in the state of North Carolina. We were established really to help provide a level of education to help support economic development in this growing field. And also one of the important things that we do is that we support consumer protection, especially for homeowners and others that have questions about renewable energy. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the experience with solar PV in North Carolina, some of the impacts, the positive, as well as current areas of work on looking at some of the issues around solar development in North Carolina. We'll cover some of the commonly expressed concerns about PV, and then get into specific concerns. I'm going to take maybe about 10 minutes for my formal presentation, and hopefully be able to answer as many of your questions as you have today. So in this slide, I'm going to cover just some of the drivers. Why are we here talking about solar in North Carolina? The first action that the state took was back in 2007. That's driving things today. And this is when the General Assembly passed a law called the North Carolina Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard. And that established a standard which required utilities, especially the investor-owned utilities, cooperatives, and munis that were doing business in the state of North Carolina, to produce or procure a certain percentage of their electricity from renewable sources. As of the end of the REPS, the REPS increased the amount of renewable energy required up to 12% in 2021. For rural electric co-ops and municipal utilities, there's a 10% requirement. And so what this did, it spawned an industry, which was already here, but really helped that industry to grow by basically requiring the utilities to procure a certain amount of this energy. As a result of that, and also the industry itself, costs for solar installations came down quite a bit. Over the past 10 years, it's come down to an average cost of $1.75 per watt of capacity installed from $5 10 years ago. So that cost reduction has been a big driver, and that's came about because of efficiencies in manufacturing, as well as in the installation of these systems. Finally, one of the big drivers is that there's a lot of people employed in this industry. There's over 1,700 firms in the overall clean energy industry in North Carolina. That includes not just solar and renewable energy, but energy efficiency, but also solar, and they employ over 43,000 individuals, and that's from a census that's taken every year of the clean energy industry. And then finally, in the bottom chart here, you'll see the average installations that have grown and grown over the years. We're here in 2020, and one of the newest things here is that the state passed last session House Bill 329, and House Bill 329, among other things, required the utilities to do a competitive procurement of renewable energy. And so, Duke Energy and Dominion have gone out and solicited quotes through an RFP process from developers. And we're now in the process, I guess one round of that RFP process has gone through, and they're in the process of developing those, and there's a second round underway of that RFP process. So it's a very critical time for the industry, but also a very good time in that costs they're still seeing very low costs and being able to meet the requirements of this renewable portfolio standard. This is a map overall of North Carolina that shows the location of various solar systems and solar PV systems in the state. The dots, the orange dots, indicate the size of the systems. And this covers residential systems as well as commercial systems that are on rooftops, but also utility scale systems. I will say a couple things. You'll see the installed capacity. North Carolina is the #2 state in the country for installed solar capacity. And in terms of the size of these installations, some of the larger dots you see there, those are, I'll just say that a lot of those represent systems that are, 30, 40 megawatts or above. And in the state, there's probably about 30 of those types of systems that are currently installed. There are many positive impacts of PV, solar PV. It does, during operation, has no emissions that affect the air. And so there's a public health improvement there. It also helps in a sense of basically keeping money from flowing out of the state that's going to pay for fuels that are brought in, such as coal or natural gas or other fossil fuels. It can, among other things, increase your local property tax base. And then there is some employment during the development as well as during the maintenance and operation of the systems. Recognizing, however, that there are, things that the state needs to do to make sure that solar are put in responsibly and according to industry standards, our center at NC State issued this white paper in 2017 about the health and safety impacts of solar PV. I'll go through some of the specifics in this here, but we were really trying to, establish, the existence of standards to educate people about standards that needed to be followed in the installation of PV and deal with questions particularly that people had. One of the examples, for example, is fire safety, and so we try to provide information for first responders to be able to know what to do, and we also followed up with training for many first responders on what to do in case of a fire that involved a building with solar PV. Another thing that we did in response to some of the needs that we saw out there in 2016 was we worked with a group of stakeholders to establish or to develop a template solar energy ordinance for North Carolina. And in this ordinance, it deals with various system sizes, small scale residential to commercial and utility scale, and some of the considerations for issuing conditional or special use permits, ways that landowners needed to be protected, developer responsibilities, and then things such as setbacks, heights, stormwater runoff, and screening of solar fields. And finally, we address in this white paper decommissioning, which is becoming of late, a very a topic that's being talked about a lot, I guess I should say. In 2019, the General Assembly passed a law addressing decommissioning as well as what to do with solar modules and batteries and other renewable energy systems at the end of their useful life. That is House Bill 329 of 2019. Probably the key thing about that bill is that it required the Environmental Management Commission to develop a set of rules. They'll be developing those rules by the beginning of 2021. And what those rules will do is basically, that process will do is basically figure out what exactly are we regulating. What are the hazards or hazardous materials in solar modules that need to be dealt with at the end of their life. And then how do we do that? So how do we properly recycle or dispose of solar modules, batteries, et cetera? And then finally, this rulemaking process was to look at whether or not there needed to be rules about decommissioning of these facilities. Particularly, one of the questions asked in this law for the commission to address is whether or not there needs to be some kind of financial assurance to make sure that the systems are decommissioned at the end of their useful life. So that process is underway right now. The Department of Environmental Quality is running that process. It's several groups within DEQ, including the Solid Waste Program, the State Energy Office, or State Energy Division rather, as well as the Division of Environmental and Consumer Affairs. So I talked a little bit about the template solar ordinance. This is a current list of all the counties in North Carolina. I believe it's just under maybe about 39 or so counties that do have some sort of solar development ordinance. And what solar development ordinance allows you to do is really to make sure that solar fits into your vision of what the county is, as well as putting protections on how these projects are put in place, how they're seen from adjacent properties, trying to minimize the impact on adjacent properties' values. And in this template ordinance that I mentioned, many of these counties have adopted the template ordinance that was developed. By the way, it was developed with this support and input from many stakeholders, including the Association of County Commissioners, the League of Municipalities, and other regulatory agencies in the state. But the solar development ordinance is a very useful tool. That's not to say that without a solar development ordinance, you can't have solar put in place according to standards. Many counties that I've seen without an ordinance have put specific restrictions on solar projects or requirements on them, such as the type of panels they might use or what have you. One of the commonly expressed concerns about solar PV is the visual impact that it has on the landscape. This is something that we hear commonly. Solar panels, though, and the way they're installed, they do have a fairly low profile. Here's a view of a solar field in an open space there at 500 feet. You can see, they kind of blend in with the horizon, although this is a flat topography. Compare that to animal houses, at 500 feet, which also have an impact on the visual landscape. Glare is also something that people ask about commonly with solar modules. PV modules, though, they're designed to absorb and not reflect as much sunlight as possible so they can be more efficient. We worked also with FAA in developing this the solar template ordinance. Sound is a concern that people express. The primary sound might be from inverters or transformers on the site, as with many electrical devices. But you'll find that those pieces of equipment are usually installed close to the center of the site so they can be efficiently connected to all of the modules. And so at the fence line of the site, you don't see a lot of, you don't hear a lot of noise, I should say. Then there are material hazard concerns. And we divide those up into several components. What kind of hazards are there during construction? What hazards are there from the components themselves? And then what hazards do you have during the operation and maintenance of the arrays? And I'll cover a little bit about the PV modules themselves. One type of module that you'll see most commonly is crystalline silicone modules. Those comprise of over 90% of what's being installed today. These modules, they're very solid and stable. And they are, that's because they have to be designed to hold up for 25 years out in the environment. They have to withstand the sun, wind, and water. So they're completely sealed under a glass cover. There's some encapsulant to protect the electronics inside, and then there's a back sheet also as well. So they are very stable, and highly recyclable as well. 80% of the module itself is comprised of aluminum and glass. So right there, when you go to take these out of service, you have a lot of the PV module that is recyclable. And I'll tell you that people are working on better ways to recycle modules as we see more and more coming out of service. You know, the first big project that went in North Carolina was back in 2006. It was only about 250 kW over at the PNC Arena in Raleigh. So we're not going to see a lot of modules coming out of service in high volumes for another 10 years. But we'll be working on what to do with those modules. That's part of the reason why this HBIL 329 process is going on. Another leading type of PV module you hear about is cadmium telluride, or CDTE. That's only about 5% of the market share out there. These are also rated for 25 years, so they have to have this very solid structure and be very stable and encapsulated as well. There's one manufacturer of these thin film panels in the U.S. for solar, and they actually have a recycling program where they can take back the modules themselves for recycling in-house. So during operation of solar PV modules, we have, as the PV modules are sitting in the field, doing their thing and generating electricity, there are no operational air, water, ground emissions related to the modules or the equipment themselves. And PV modules, now at the end of their life, they have to pass what's called a EPA toxic characteristic leaching protocol test. That test is required in order to classify whether or not these modules can be put into a landfill. And in that test, they break up the modules into small pieces and test whether it might leach a variety of metals that the EPA has classified as hazardous. Those include arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, selenium, and silver. And there's specific limits for each of those. And the way it's done right now, if you had a set of modules to be disposed of, you'd have to do this test on them. And if they pass the test, they're allowed to go into a landfill. They're not classified as hazardous waste. So that's kind of the standard test out there. And most modules do pass those tests there. We are actually working here at NC State to get some funding to do some testing on modules both in the field as well as after the end of their life in order to characterize these tests specific to North Carolina. And then finally, I'll say inverters are compliant with ROHS standards. Those are a European standard for electronics. And most of them nowadays, the transformers use non-toxic mineral or vegetable oil, so they're less hazardous than PCBs. I will say one thing that I saw in the minutes from the last meeting that considered this topic, as well as we were hearing in more and more forums, is about the PFAS compounds, which are basically a class of many compounds that are used in the manufacture of plastics. And we've looked a lot for evidence, research to say whether or not, to answer the key question of whether or not solar modules in the field have the potential to leach PFAS. And we have not seen any evidence of that being a reality. We do want to do the testing ourselves just to make sure, and we'll hold our opinion until then. But we haven't seen any evidence of that. In fact, these days, because of other countries having being maybe more ahead of the curve as opposed to the United States in regulating these PFAS chemicals, there are many manufacturers out there that already PFAS can say that they don't have any PFAS in their modules. This is a letter from a solar company as well as DuPont. This is from a project that was done in Beaufort that was submitted to the Utilities Commission, and I did not provide a copy of this, but I would be happy to later, stating that that their modules don't contain any of the chemical compounds that are known as Gen X or PFAS. And then DuPont also says that the backsheet, the Tedlar backsheet, as well as the Teflon is not used in these applications. So that's something that maybe a developer could potentially provide for you to address those concerns for now. Site maintenance and operations. There is also, during the operations of a solar PV site, considerations for how do you manage that site responsibly. And there are standards for that as well. You do have to keep vegetation low, and a lot of that's done through strategic selection of the vegetation. In fact, we're finding many solar installers these days, they're trying to disturb the site as little as possible and keep what's there. There is some application of herbicides in certain areas, and those are the types of herbicides that you might see used along a roadside to control weeds or on a farm to control weed, things like Roundup and what have you. Ultimately, though, these sites are very, when they're permitted by the DEQ or Corps of Engineers or by the authority having jurisdiction, they typically have to show that they have no net increase in stormwater runoff, that runoff is not being sent off to other adjacent properties containing any of these herbicides. And finally, all of these sites have to engage licensed professionals to maintain their sites. I talked a little bit about end of life and decommissioning, but primarily, you need to know that the PV system owner, the entity that's leasing the land from the landowner, is responsible for this decommissioning. Typically today, what we do, or what the industry does, is determines the salvage value of the PV modules and equipment at the end of the life of the system. And they'll need to provide an estimate of that salvage value versus the cost. Sometimes it's estimated to be about the same, sometimes it's estimated higher. I have seen some saying that there is a net cost to it. But that is something that they do build into the economics. And the investors also, the financiers, the investors are also very aware and concerned about the decommissioning in order to be good stewards. And so the land ultimately, once it ceases to be used as a solar facility, typically is required to be returned to the condition it was before a solar project was developed there. EMF and radiation is another concern. I will say that there's many things that we have, our phones or microwave ovens that emit EMF. The primary EMF emitter in the solar farm is the AC side of the inverter. That's common with all types of AC equipment. But at the perimeter of the fence, or the edge of the site, we really see very little concern having to do with EMF being emitted from the site itself. I mentioned a little bit about fire safety. PV modules themselves are made mostly of non-flammable materials. They do not ignite easily, and they do not really sustain a fire. They might be involved in a fire where the structure is on fire, and that would, cause them to burn, but that is, not typically a concern with these larger scale installations. And like I said, firefighters and others, including the NFPA, the National Electric Code, they have upgraded codes and standards to require the requisite safety measures to make sure that they can fight a fire safely on a building that has solar PV. I appreciate your attention, and I'd like to have the opportunity to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, sir. I'll start down with Commissioner Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What percentage of these panels come from China? Do you guys have any idea?
I don't really have I don't have a clear idea, but it is probably the majority, although China is diminishing. A lot of them also come now from South Korea, for example. Other countries are producing these modules as well.
Does it matter where they come from? Because I've read a lot of stuff that says the ones from China are cheaper, but more questionable in their toxicity or however you pronounce it. That type of thing. I mean,
it's. I think you have to. It does. I think certainly, part of the reason why that we're importing modules here are because of the lower cost there. I think that has to do with a lot of things like the clothes we wear, I guess it's up to, I guess, individuals as consumers, and there are some companies that actually go out of their way, or to buy American modules. We actually recommend it whenever we can that you do source modules domestically if possible. That gives you better quality assurance and what have you. But still, these companies, there are some companies in China that have been in business for quite some time, and I think they understand that for their own longevity, that they need to meet certain standards in order to be in markets in Europe and the U.S. And this letter that I showed, or that talked about, is from a Chinese company that, they're able to say that they don't have PFAS in any of their modules.
Well, I would just say, my reason for bringing this moratorium up in the first place was, one of the speakers said it tonight, was I'm not an anti-solar person. I think it's a terribly inefficient way to produce electricity, or it wouldn't take hundreds of acres of them to put out electricity like it does. But that being said, I don't have anything against solar. I just want to proceed with caution, because there's a lot of arguments out there about environmental damage they can do, and they're not a great economic development investment compared to manufacturing and things like that. Like, for instance, in the areas we're talking about putting these, we have a lot of utilities there that could support other kinds of business. And I'm definitely not against people putting them on their houses and using them for that. I mean, the thing I'm concerned about is the scale of these things. I mean, we're a scenic county. What's the limit? I mean, we need to figure out somehow to do without stomping on the people's rights to use their property as they see fit. We need to have some kind of at least reasonable discussion on what our policy should be. I mean, is it okay to cover every field in this county with these things? Where when you go up on Hanging Rock, you look down and you just see a big black thing like that picture you showed there. Well, I don't think that's a good idea, and when you get into doing 700-800 acres of them at a time, we could be covered up with these things before you know it. And we just approved a 700-acre one in Walnut Cove, and then set about our business of doing a policy. And now all of a sudden there's another one. The library tomorrow night, they want to do a conditional rezoning for another 700-acre one in the same area down there where this one was just recently approved, except out on some farmland. So I guess what we really need from you guys is to help us figure out what a reasonable policy is. And my reason, like I said, for a moratorium was just to proceed with caution. They don't even have the rules for the decommissioning figured out. And there must be some fire in that smoke, or they wouldn't be putting this big panel together and taking 2 years to figure out how to do this. So and this is good information you provided us and everything. Are you guys like do you consider, does NC State University consider itself a pro-solar? I mean, pro-solar versus,
No.
say an objective, independent evaluator of solar?
We maintain a lot of pride in the fact that we are unbiased.
Okay.
That we're really here, we exist really to educate people.
Okay.
In fact, I work on projects that involve, natural gas, combined heat and power, and other fossil fuels. I think we are, though, moving in the direction of trying to lessen the amount of fossil fuels that we use, and then trying to increase the amount of renewable energy that we do use. But there's all types of other sources like biogas or biomass that are also appropriate for North Carolina.
I think anybody would really like to use the sun if you could put like a 20 by 20 solar panel up and it produces as much electricity as 700 acres of them will. But given that lack of efficiency, it just, I don't want to push my personal agenda on anybody. I want to do what the folks in the county want us to do. But if we don't at least slow down and take a look at this, we'll be covered up with these things before we even figure out what the folks out in the county want to do. And, there's a lot of other factors, they say they don't affect land values. They got this whole spiel, they don't affect land values when you put one of them out, but then they have to buffer it, so I don't know why it needs buffered if it doesn't affect land values, and whether it does or not, that I think there's different opinions on that. But I guess what I think I read up in Virginia, they've got some ordinances where they put a percentage, say for a particular county can only have 1% of the geography covered with solar panels. So I would like to explore all of that and come up with a reasonable solution, based on facts provided by both sides of the argument, which we got a really good example of that tonight. We had good arguments from both sides tonight, and that's really helpful because what I said I would do when I ran for office was make fact-based decisions based on information provided from both sides of an issue. So that's a little process we're trying to go through here, and I guess my request to you guys would be to help us come up with what a reasonable ordinance should look like for a rural county that's really has a lot of tourism and scenic qualities to it, and to make sure that we don't, these things go in for so long, for 30, 40 years. I mean, who knows what's going to be happening just 20 years from now. And so I would just ask for your help, and we'll continue to get more input from our citizens on coming up with a reasonable approach to deal with these things. But like I said, my moratorium, we did a moratorium on fracking here before for 3 years for almost the same reason, so we could kind of figure out what was going on with it before somebody forced it on us. That's kind of my thought process. Like I said at the beginning, is just proceed with caution, and because we can't put the horse back in the barn once we're covered up with these things. So that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Mendenhall? I'm sorry, did you need to say
Oh,
one
I
more?
just wanted to respond to your request for help, saying that, we'd be happy to help. And I think one of the best things you could do is talk to neighboring counties or others that have seen maybe more of this than there are many that would be willing to share their experiences. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Yance?
Okay. Yeah, very extensive overview here. I was looking through some of the things, and I too, there's a lot of good information that I need to digest. I too feel like there needs to be some type of structure in place going forward with our solar farm. So again, this will be information that I can utilize and hopefully make an informed decision going forward. I think that I want to be very cautious that we don't, I said a while back, if I could have some questions answered, and you have answered a lot of those in this, then I'm not opposed to solar farms. But I think that we need to proceed with caution. So I obviously would not be ready to even consider putting moratorium in place tonight or even in a month from now. I think that there's a lot more research that needs to go into this overall before we jump to that just right away. But I do think there needs to be some structure around it. So, again, good information. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Walker?
Thank you, sir. A few years ago, I attended a session at our commissioners' conference on solar farms, or whatever the best current identification phrase for them is. What do you call them?
It depends on what forum we're talking about, but sometimes it's it's easy to refer to them as a solar farm because that's a kind of a noble thing, but we also call them utility scale solar facilities. That's one I've used.
At that session, some of the same discussions were happening that I hear this evening. Some of the same questions were looming at that time and being addressed as we're having a discussion about this evening. So it's a work in progress, sounds like. How many counties do you know of, or would you have a way of knowing how many counties currently have a moratorium on solar farms or what we're discussing here this evening?
I actually don't know how many do have active moratoriums in place. I know that there have been discussions in maybe less than 5 counties that I'm aware of.
Right. So out of the 100 counties, how many counties, I know you provided a map, have large-scale facilities, would you estimate? Comparable to the ones we're looking at here in our county.
Probably 20% or so.
So 20 counties out of the 100
approximately.
Already have.
Approximately.
I noticed some in the Charlotte area. Seemed like, if my geography was correct. Could I ask, please, what your thoughts about a moratorium might be, pluses and minuses?
My thoughts on a moratorium. The commission, I guess, is certainly within its rights to impose a moratorium. I don't know that the situation is as dire as that, though, and that, in my opinion, that you could certainly place conditions on any development in order to address the specific concerns that you have.
Well, I'm certainly a proponent of green energy. I think it's the future. And I don't want to see us put our county in a position where we lag behind other areas as far as our ability to benefit from that, what seems to be a developing trend. And at the same time, I know there are questions. Commissioner Morris has asked a lot of questions because of concerns he has. You have, obviously, your name is on this, put some work into addressing some of the issues, some of the concerns that go along with this type of facility or installation. The counties, you say about 20 counties perhaps have comparable installations to what we're seeing currently proposed in our county, and as Commissioner Morris pointed out, maybe others to come. How are the counties that have these facilities, how are things going for them? Are some of these concerns like herbicides and that type thing materializing to the extent people were concerned that they would, or is it pretty smooth operating? You're not hearing a lot of concerns from folks who have negative experiences regarding these installations?
Well, in terms of what I do know from talking to folks, whenever there's an issue, the company will deal with it forthwith. And honestly, I don't hear about a lot of issues because I'm not out there talking to every project. But I was in Alamance County a few months ago for a at the request of somebody to come speak there too. And there was concerns where one solar farm had had some runoff issues that affected a neighbor's property. It wasn't one that was being talked about at the time. It was one that had been put in place. And, that company did, once they, they dealt with the issue, so it would not recur. But I believe that with, proper permitting, as an engineer, there's this whole process of permitting a facility such as this or a building, and you have to follow codes and standards, to ensure that there's, safe operation, the design is safe, that, circuits won't get overloaded and what have you. So I guess I believe firmly that, with proper permitting and design that responds to those needs, that you can have an installation that's safe and that minimizes its impact on neighboring facilities. And then in terms of the specifics about herbicides, we are, not talking about anything way over and above what one might use on their landscape at home or on a farm. And I believe that, solar developers, if asked, would want to work to minimize that to, the satisfaction of the authority having jurisdiction. And in fact, there's a lot of, studies and standards being put in place now to look at using native plants, having pollinator-friendly habitat. We're actually applying for some funding from the Department of Energy to look at the coexistence of solar and agriculture. We've also done another white paper on the coexistence of farming and solar. So, it's with any industry, it's gone through some learning. I think a lot of that learning has been done, and people are working constantly to make things better and right the ship.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
Seems like the technology is improving and the ability to use that technology is increasing. Let me ask you this, if I may, please. If you found out, given the knowledge that you have, that there was a solar farm facility being proposed near your house, would you have concerns? Or if you did, what would be some of those concerns, if any?
I guess when you say near my house, I'll just say if I was a neighbor to a solar facility, I guess my biggest concern would be like, how close is it to my property? How close is the development activity? Is there a sufficient setback?
Right.
Basically to not just protect my property, but maybe give me a little buffer from that.
Breathing room.
And you are talking about, solar can be, depending on the county ordinance, can be classified as a commercial, industrial, or light industrial usage. And you do need to have, just like with other light industrial uses, certain separations from that residential type of occupancy. So that would probably be my primary concern, is how far are they set back from my property.
So if we're looking at some codes and ordinances, we might want to consider setbacks for the sake of the people who might be impacted by a facility locating close to where they live.
Sure, and I guess the impact particularly is, visual, because there is not really, a lot of activity, or noise being generated. It's primarily, a visual type of thing.
It seems in some ways to be low impact, and yet it's a change. It's something that would catch people's attention, I'm sure, because we get used to things being the way they are, and then something comes along, and all of a sudden it changes, pretty big change, and we have to readjust to it. If you were where we are, and you were looking at developing some codes and rules, regs, whatever, how would you go about that? Where would you start? And what kind of template would you look for so that we don't have to invent the wheel again? We can kind of hit the ground running, so to speak, and use something tried and proven.
Well, I guess I'd start with, first of all, what you have on the books in terms of your zoning regulations and ordinances. And then look at some of the examples. The template ordinance that was developed with stakeholders is one, but also look at other counties in North Carolina, especially ones that are similar to Stokes County, and really see what elements of those specific county ordinances or a template that you might want to adopt. And it would be important, I think, to have it, be kind of a stakeholder involved process where you do have, landowners who, own land that might want to develop solar. Also, you need landowners that aren't interested in that to be involved in the whole process.
Now, it seems to me, unless I've missed something, that the better job we could do developing sufficient codes, ordinances, regs, whatever, the less need there would be for a long moratorium. If we can have the guidelines in place, if we know we're on the right track, we have things pretty buttoned up as far as addressing the concerns. We involve stakeholders, as you suggested, which I think is a very good idea. Then that would sort of help offset the need for a moratorium. But then on the other hand, you referenced 2021 as the year that the state will have some more guidelines in place.
Well, yes. 2021 is important. That's by the beginning of 2021 is when the Environmental Management Commission is required to develop these rules for what to do with solar at the end of their life, of solar modules, batteries, and other renewable energy components. So it's not really, those rules don't have to do with the actual development and installation. It has to do with what happens in 25 years or so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there, and maybe some other commissioners have posed some questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mennonite?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Very good job.
Sure. Sorry I went a little overtime.
Okay. I, as with Commissioner Yance, certainly feel like, as I have said many times, I like to analyze the information very closely and do my due diligence before come up with final decisions as we move forward with this. And because you presented so many different factors, and slide 5 showed 12,571 systems in all North Carolina, 67 in Stokes County, I believe.
Correct.
And at the same time, as I looked over at the very end, talking about 2019 law, House Bill 329, rules to establish a regulatory program. This is one of those that I really want to study. And I'm like Commissioner Yance, this is not something I think that we can work on at our next meeting or in a month or two. So, pretty much what Commissioner Yance said, I echo tonight. And I just want to say thank you for this information. It's certainly beneficial, and it certainly helps me to get a better understanding of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Got just a couple of questions for you, just kind of get your opinion on it. You had said something about there was about 43,000 employees. Is this just, you talking about temp or long-term employees?
Those would be full-time equivalent employees. And to be clear, that's the whole clean energy sector, which is not just PV, but solar PV, but other clean energy sectors. And that includes like alternative transportation, where we're trying to, electrify vehicles or put energy efficiency in the building so people can save money.
Okay. Yeah. That's in many different things, just not just the solar field.
That's correct.
Okay. You said something about back in 2006. There was some installed there, been there. said something about being about 25 years or so. I thought most leases were set up on 20 years. Am I correct on that, or?
Most leases, well, first of all, the project I referred to back in 2006 was at the PNC Arena.
Okay.
And we actually just a couple of years ago replaced the inverter for that project, so it, you know, it probably has another 10 years life left on it now. But most leases, the way that works is that in order to make the project bankable, developers typically will establish a 15-year lease with the landowner or landowners, and then have 5-year extender clauses on that.
Okay.
Initial 15 years.
When the land is returned back to normal, how far out do they monitor that, do you think? Because I'm sure it probably hasn't been done yet, is that correct?
In terms of...
they return the land back to pre-solar conditions.
Well, it's going to be different for different projects. And so, you know, really what it'll require is if there's some kind of structures built there, like, and I'm talking about, you know, gravel drives and things like that. Those will need to be taken up and replanted, you know, what have you. It really, like I said, it depends on the specific project and what the agreement between the developer and the landowner is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it something that you have seen to be guaranteed? Like, are you going to guarantee this thing's going to be back to the way it was pre-solar? In other words, if they had to clear some trees and stuff out of the way, they're going to put trees back, or they just look to put grass back?
Well, there is a legally binding agreement between the owner of the land and the leaseholder. I can't respond specifically to the question of trees. I mean, obviously, if you're cutting down trees, which, you know, I would personally like to avoid, you know, you can't replant the same trees. You have to replant trees that will, in some time, become, you know, mature. So.
And as we see about every day, every year, technology is improving every year. What do you kind of see in the future? Is there anything being looked at, like maybe the development of these panels that could use up half the space and still generate as much electricity? Do you see anything like it in the future?
Well, that's an important factor. Although I'll say that there's a theoretical maximum to how efficient the current solar technologies can be. They probably can be up to 30% efficient in terms of how much of the sunlight that is falling on them gets converted to electricity. The modules that are going in now, the top of the line modules probably approach about 20% efficiency. So they have about a third of the way to be improved, but then there's cost barriers to making them that much more efficient. Folks are working on developing, you know, different types of solar modules, you know, that will be more efficient, but that's, you know, that's not something that we can really predict right now. Yeah, probably the biggest trend right now is in terms of, you know, looking at storage batteries for these facilities, and that's really intended to help, you know, store the power for when it's really needed, to help smooth out the operation of these things that utilities are, you know, like to see in, you know, power generation.
More questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple more, but you can go first.
Thank you, sir. This seems to be the front edge of a significant trend toward green energy. I know we have the wind turbines, but I'm not hearing much about those in North Carolina. Evidently, we're just not way up the list as far as wind locations for wind turbines. Maybe down toward the coast or something. I don't know. I've never actually even seen one in our state. But this seems to be catching on. I mean, you showed us a map that has extensive facilities identified already, and you know, we're looking at one, maybe another. So it seems to be an emerging trend that we're going to have to deal with some way or the other. And personally, I'd like to see our county in the forefront for green energy, but we have to keep balance as well. We can't just give away the farm, so to speak, to no pun intended, but we can't just go all in that direction without considering all that's involved. But have I missed anything? Are you seeing it sort of as an emergent trend? This is where things are going? This is where they're headed?
Well, I hate to counter you on that, but I
Not
think
a problem.
it's
You have the
actually
knowledge that I don't have.
it's actually a very mature industry, but it's always constantly evolving. Right now, one of the things is that these solar facilities, the way that they're interconnected with the utility, for safety reasons, if the utility goes down, then they have to disconnect from the grid and not energize the grid so that a line worker won't get electrocuted. We're moving towards where, if the grid goes down, these systems will be configured to provide power, to homes or businesses or hospitals or whoever needs it, until the rest of the grid has come up. So I think it's a very mature industry. It's come a long way. There's a lot of people with a lot of great experience in the state, in terms of, the design and installation of these systems. There are also constant innovations being made. And I think we're still always going to be looking for improvements. What's the next source of, renewable energy?
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Moore?
You said there's cost associated with the improving the efficiency of them, but isn't it really more technology than cost of tech? Or have we already peaked on the technology side of it, and it's not going to get any better as far as efficiency goes?
It's when I say cost, it's, you can make a solar cell in the laboratory that will, be 29% efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But it just costs. That might be something that you would use for an application on a satellite where, maybe space and compactness and weight is a bit more of a factor. I think the modules that are out there today in the field really balance, I guess, cost and other factors.
Okay. You mentioned a while ago that you had received some money or were applying for some money to study the coexistence of these things with agriculture, I think you said.
Yes.
Given that, and then are there other areas? Because if you weren't pursuing money to research it, that would tell me you already knew the answer. So you must not know the answer. You wouldn't be researching it right.
Well.
So my question is, given that, are there other areas that you guys are pursuing to do additional or trying to get additional funding, do additional research to answer questions that you don't know about these things?
Let me just give a little context. The funding that we receive, some comes from the state, and we also get some federal grant funds that we apply for. And a lot of what's currently out there is a funding opportunity from the Department of Energy's Solar Energy Technologies Office. And this funding opportunity has 7 different topic areas, I believe. They include configuring solar so that it can support resilient community microgrids, kind of along the lines of, if the utility goes down, that, critical facilities like hospitals and police stations have power. This is just one topic area, the coexistence of solar and agriculture. And under that, it's not that these things aren't being done or haven't been tried or aren't ideas that are out there. They are ideas or they have been tried, but they seem to have, I guess, to the Department of Energy, enough validity and benefit or potential impact where they want to support funding to make them, to study them and make them more widespread.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, an area like the coexistence with agriculture is exactly the kind of information we need to know before we approve these things. I mean, because that's what you're going to have here is agriculture and solar farms sitting beside of each other. So
yeah.
I'd be interested in any other areas that you guys are looking at that might inform us as we try to develop our ordinance or whatever for these things.
Okay.
Areas that we have unanswered questions, I guess.
Yeah. I will say that one topic area is not typical. Most of the other topic areas in this funding opportunity have to do with, utilities and solar and how, or improving the manufacturing processes for solar.
Okay, I just one last question. What about when you introduce batteries into this process and the hazards associated with batteries? Is that something we need to be informed on as we do an ordinance? Because batteries can be pretty nasty to deal with as far as disposal and that sort of thing.
Yes. Well, batteries themselves, that's something that was not included in the original template ordinance that we developed. And in fact, the State Division of Environmental Quality wants us to go back this year and include batteries in there and some guidance on how you might address, the inclusion of batteries in these solar facilities. The batteries themselves, they have to, the installation of them has to be done very carefully in a way that addresses things such as fires with the batteries. You have to have, fire suppression to keep them from running away or the fires from getting out of control. If it happens, you have to make sure that you have spill containment types of structures in place. I think I go back to where it's a matter of codes and standards that have been developed by, the NFPA or the NEC to really address these concerns. It's also part of, I think, the building code has certain things about how to properly design the installation of batteries. And I think if you look at those kind of things, it's a safe bet that, you cover all these different types of potential hazards that might happen with a battery.
Okay. Then one last question. Do you have any concern that all of these things appear to be owned by LLCs? I mean, I have an LLC and I know why I have it, so I'm kind of wondering why we see that it looks like all of them are owned by LLCs. Is that a non-issue, or does that tell us something?
It's certainly a favored ownership structure when you have multiple investors or owners. And some of these projects, they do have, investors that are investing to get the tax equity benefits of it. There's others that are not, and the LLC is just a good structure to put all that together. When you hear the term limited liability company, it seems like, somebody's trying to, protect themselves from liability. But ultimately, the company is liable, and they would be responsible for any costs or damages that arise out of their work.
Okay. Thanks for answering all the questions. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you for coming here tonight. We appreciate you getting all the information we didn't know. And appreciate you taking time with us.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on now to item D, the feasibility study for the wellness center. Mr. Oakley.
Mr. Chairman, in the previous board meeting, the board discussed the possibility of a feasibility study done on a wellness center. And the discussion also was concerning the community development on what type of facility it is needed in the eastern side of the county. With that said, I have given you a map attached to the agenda here showing 4 census tract areas that shows mainly pretty much about 60% of the county that pertains to the eastern side of the county, along with 2010 census tract information, along with their approximate number of homes that would be in this area. And with that, if we could come up with a set of questions that you would like to have in a questionnaire that could be mailed out, that we could get this thing started, we get the ball rolling to where we could get them up with some kind of design or some kind of input on what type of facility you would like to have, and what kind of input we could get from the citizens in this area here. And with this area here, it can be changed. I just selected 4 census tract area that as you can see, that was that could give me accurate information on population instead of splitting the tract. and utilizing the GIS department and the tax office on their database as far as the partials that would be here and the homes that would be here and the addresses that would be here. We could utilize them in an area that we could mail these questionnaires out. We could mail them out ourselves at a certain expense that it would cost to have it produced and mailed, or we can attach on to the tax office and utilize the mailing that goes out with the tax bills. We'd have to get with South Data that does the mailing for the tax bills and give them a certain range of addresses that would be used, because that's what the insert would go in on the bills on that. But it would definitely give you some kind of idea of what you're looking for, what you want to have, what you would like to carry to an engineer to get some kind of design or some layout of approximate cost and size and what facilities that you're offering. And then you could turn it over to a vendor that could possibly come in and take that information and go with a feasibility study that would be needed, because everyone we talk to now wants to know what type of structure are we having here, so they can know what type of feasibility study you would need. We don't know what type of structure is needed, and maybe this could help us lay out the type of facility that would be in the Meadows area that you've always talked about. So with that, we could show them what information we have. Then we can get with the company that handles these type of studies and kind of fine tune it in a manner that it could come up with data that we could use in maybe moving forward with funding and grants and other areas that will allow us to accomplish what would be needed for the folks in this area on this side of the mountain. But anyway, I'm just trying to get the ball going, get it rolling, and hopefully if a board would like for me to do this, I'd be more than happy to do it. And that way you can have a little bit of information that you can carry to a company that can definitely get you started on a feasibility study of what you would need with that. So this will be up to the board if you'd like. Like I said, once we got the survey done and the wording and the questions we would like to ask, and so this would be a board input. We would bring them back to you. We'd want to know what type of questions you'd want on there, and along with other folks, and make sure that we are covering the grounds that needed to be covered concerning this center, and you know, maybe we can get it started. It's just but we got to start it somehow or another, and if you don't start involving people in certain areas or defining the area that you want, then we're still just sitting around spinning our wheels, and we're not accomplishing anything. But you've got a GIS department in the tax office that can produce anything you want as far as territory, geographical data on where things is at and the structures that's within it. And then we can utilize the tax office in this mailing. And maybe by this fall, in the new budget, you could have money set aside to actually have this feasibility study and say, hey folks, this is what we're looking for now. Because here's what the people in this certain area that we want to serve is saying that they'd like to have. And then they can start conducting their study on whether or not it can be feasibly supported by this group of citizens, or it needs to be in another different location to pull this off, or it don't work at all. So, you know, this way, you know, we're finding out what actually needs to be done. So, and I'd be willing to, you know, like we said, I'm willing to help you get this done, and the tax office is also.
Questions or comments? Mr. Walker?
Thanks, sir. I waited for somebody else to give them first go. I think, in a way, this became a divisive issue. And it was divided along the lines of, are you trying to help this happen, look for ways to help get it to happen, or are you just trying to find ways to impede it happening? to slow it down or derail it. And that's how a lot of people that were talking to me were seeing this. But that's not how things get done. I think the way things get done is, one, we try to identify what best serves the needs, wants and needs of the people in this part of the county. Lots of folks have said it's just not reasonable for the folks who live in this area to be expected to drive to King, to the southwest part of the county, for exercise or recreation. It's just unrealistic. I wouldn't do it. It would be too far of a stretch. It's 30 minutes over, 30 minutes back, and folks just don't have that kind of time these days, seems like. So the main thing, I guess, for a feasibility study that needs to be decided is what exactly are we trying to accomplish with this study? What information do we need that will help us make the decisions in the way they need to be made to do what needs to be done? And, you know, we can send out a survey, get the response back, analyze them. We could get somebody, hire somebody to do it. I think we have a little work to do as a board to decide what we're trying to accomplish and how could we best do what we need to do. And I'll stop there and give anyone else a chance to say what they feel like they need to say.
All right. Mr. Young?
I would agree with Commissioner Walker that I think that we have a little more work to do on our end to decide, is this going to be a wellness center? Is it, you know, I had expressed an interest in not only a wellness center, but some type of park that we could actually tournaments and things of that nature that would basically create some revenue stream in that area as well in conjunction with it. I think that level of commitment is what we need to decide if we're willing to make or not before we start a direction. I think that's kind of what we need to know is, as a group, are we willing to look at that and is it feasible to put a complex like that there? And what would be the biggest draw if you're looking at economic development in the area?
I'm pretty much on board with both what Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Young said, which is we need ourselves to come up with our direction, where we want to head with this. I'm not sure we have that as a consensus right now. We've got to have it before we move forward.
Let me say that we need that. My commitment is to try to put a complex there. I mean, I'll be the first one to say that. That's what I would like to see come to fruition is something that not only supports a wellness center as the center of the property, but then around that to have, as I said earlier, if it's soccer fields, softball fields, whatever it may be. We've heard all these people talk about all these different things, and the youth have nowhere to go. They have nothing. And we talk about opioids. We talk about all these things that we could use this as a hub, not only for economic development, but to give them somewhere to go. So my commitment would be to hopefully see something like that.
Mr. Morris?
I don't know where to start on this. You know, we're talking about a $4 or $5 million project, or at least we were before, and so I think we definitely have to have the folks' input on it directly. If we're going to spend $4 or $5 million, that's a lot of money out of our budget. It gets back in the program management world I used to work in. You know, is there a requirement? If so, what is the requirement? And we've got to somehow determine through a survey or some way. Maybe the first question is, we're going to take $4 million of your tax money to do something in the recreation area. Do you feel that's a valid requirement or not from the folks? And gotta, you know, I kind of hate to, I think your thing, Jake said, wait till July to send it out.
Well, it's just saving some money to what we can attach with the tax bill.
That's a long time to wait just to start gathering information, and
We can definitely do it now as soon as everybody is together on what type of questionnaire you would have one sent out.
maybe do it some
It's
other
just
way
more
than the tax
comfortable.
bill, just to not have to wait so long.
Yeah.
But and then my I just had a thought, you know, we got this two colors here on the map. Would there be any negative impact by not involving the folks that are on the left side of the map? I mean, would they, I know it's not targeted specifically for their use, but then, you know, you really never know. I mean, some people drive from the pink side over to King to use facilities, so I'm not so certain. A lot of folks might not want to drive from the white side over to the pink side to use it. So that's just a thought. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I suspect if we split it up like this, then you could get some pushback from the left side of the map there. I don't know.
And that's something that we would definitely need to take into consideration, because if I lived in the area of Yadkin Township or Francis Cove or Westfield area, the first thing that come out of my mind would be, is there a continual reoccurrence of tax dollars that's going to go here? Because my tax dollars are being spent. I want to know.
That was my point. All their tax dollars are going to pay for it, and I realize, I think if you tell me or somebody that whenever we built the Y, there was money that flowed from the county government over to help subsidize that.
And the town also.
Yeah, and so in the town, so we got to make sure this all gets balanced out properly as far as the funding goes from that kind of aspect.
So you may want to just utilize. You might want to involve the entire county and let everybody have their input on it.
Well, may I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing about involving the county and doing a survey is you can separate out the responses geographically. We can break it down, any young, old, male, female, this side of the county, other side of the county. Once the information comes back, it can be analyzed in various ways. And it just needs to be done in statistically intact ways to be sure the integrity of the survey is there. Now, another thing too, Commissioner Yance has a wonderful idea, but what if the survey comes back and says, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it, but let's do it in the other part of the county, where it's easier to access and more convenient for folks coming from other areas. So there's a risk in kind of elevating it to a certain status, because then it becomes desirable for people in all parts of the county. Well, why are you locating it over there instead of where it's easier to get to? And if we're going to be doing it for economic development, questions like that could enter into the picture. Another thing too is we've already had an architectural drawing of a proposed wellness and community center. And to my knowledge, everyone who saw that, particularly folks in this area, said, oh my gosh, that'd be so nice to have here. That would serve so many purposes. Yes. And so if we took a concept like that, this is kind of a feasibility / concept study to determine, one, does it make sense to do anything? And two, if it makes sense to do something, what is it we need to do? So it's both feasibility and concept. The other thing too is how much, you referenced tax money, Commissioner Morris, how much money is on the table with grants and extremely low interest loans, should we choose to say, let's go ahead and find a way to make this happen? How many grants are out there that can be put toward this and drop that basic price down incrementally, depending on how much funding we can acquire from USDA? And the gentleman from the USDA who came and did a couple of presentations was very clear that there, at that time, I don't know how much still exists, maybe more, maybe less, maybe about the same. At that time, there were funds available for a project like this. The only stipulation that he put toward it was we cannot call it a recreation center. As long as it's called a wellness center, he thought we could acquire some funding from the USDA, and that's just a start. What else is out there? Part of grants, you name it, that we're not getting now. And so the main thing to me is there enough commitment on a part of this board to try to move forward and do something, or will this board be talking a year from now still trying to come up to decide what way they want to do? So are we going to try to get something done, or are we going to keep talking about it? And somewhere in between, there's something that makes sense, something that says, well, here's some steps we need to take. Maybe it is gather more information, but you folks, I'm sure, have heard of analysis, paralysis by analysis. Just keep analyzing till something goes away. So we've got an opportunity here. There is, I think, a lot of interest. There is a need. It's just a matter of what we're going to do about it, and when, and how. That drawing, how many have actually, we all saw that drawing, didn't we? And you know, that basic concept right there would cover a lot of needs. Number one, one thing is, by locating it near the schools, that gives those folks recreational opportunities that they direly need. One of the biggest complaints I've heard from the folks at the early college, for example, is they need more recreational opportunities. At one time, it was planned to put a little part of the vocational building toward PE just to give them something. Well, this would be a lot better than that. And it's right there, contiguous to the campus. It adjoins the campus. So what more could you ask for as far as helping serve the needs of the community college and the early college? But anyway,
How many people want to do that?
Sir?
Not everybody wants to do that, I don't think.
Well, can I say one thing? And I think that's great. I think that's a great idea in theory, but it's going to pose some problems. And the problem is going to be is you're going to have high school students intermingling with the public who you can't do that.
Well, you could have set hours. You could have
But
specified hours.
That's something that we would have to research and make sure that we, because if you're going to say 5 days a week, it's being utilized by the early college.
2 hours a day. I think that leaves a lot of time.
There's just a lot of potential issues there, and I think we know what we're talking about. Mixing public with students without background checks, things of that nature. I mean, there's a lot of potential.
I think that's how they do it at the Y.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to come to the Y anytime can, and there's no background checks.
You know, I guess we're assuming, one way you could do this is hire somebody to do the survey as well and do it as part of the feasibility study. If you just have a basic definition of what it is we want them to do, like, is it for sure going to be recreation?
Wellness.
If it's recreation.
We can't label it recreation.
We'll call it exercise or whatever. But, you know, I'm thinking like, you know, maybe the people say instead of that building, they want a massive structure to play Little League baseball or something. Because, I mean, people take their kids all over the state and the country to travel around, play ball and stuff, and all of a sudden, if you do something like that, then this distance between Kings is no longer an issue. That might be the closest place they can go to play travel ball instead of some other city. So I think we've got to at least get some terms, some definition, and then maybe hire somebody to do a feasibility study based on that definition and let them survey everybody.
If we had something like what you're saying, a definite project that we could put it out there to a company, we would get all kinds of people. So far, I've not given them anything to really go on, so they're asking me for a lot more clarification in order to do that. So that's why we came up with this, maybe as a way to get us some answers, then we can give somebody, you know, something to go on, unless we can get some kind of a definitive answer among the board about it.
I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so to speak. I'm not trying to impose my views on the board. I don't think that's fair for any of us to attempt, and I certainly don't want to be guilty of that. But maybe we could take a step toward getting something started to happen by going with the design that we had in place. What I'm looking for,
I really didn't like it.
matter of opinion, but anyway.
It's a gym with a running track and I don't think it.
Exercise room.
Well, we actually, if you remember in that drawing.
Dance rooms in a gym.
Yeah.
With an elevated running
So
track.
you just described a Y on a smaller scale.
Yeah, but I'm.
Anyway.
Swimming pool.
What was phase 2, Commissioner Marks?
Phase 2 is something that'll never get funded. That's what it was.
Well, if it's not started, it never will. You're absolutely
I do
right.
phase 2 before I did phase 1.
Avery County, you'd built a pole before you built the other. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got a little work to do with the board.
I say we go ahead and move on, because we're going to kind of go around in
Let
circles.
me kind of make one suggestion, if I may, or offer something for consideration. How about we do check to see what firms are out there that would do a survey and what kind of costs we're looking at for someone to do, like Commissioner Morris suggested, give us a quote on what they would do to help us along with this, if there's sufficient interest even in moving along with it, and what they could do and what the cost would likely be.
Let your clerk of the board answer that question for you.
Okay.
She's really worked hard on that.
Good.
I mean, I've reached out to numerous places, and until I give them something specific that I want them to study, I can't get anybody to give me a price on something because I'm not giving them enough information. You know, I mean,
Just have 1 second. I'm going to pass 1 second, but
Modest request.
to me, the example that comes to my mind is specificity, and I won't take long, is because when we took a vote on whether we were going to put the quarter-cent sales tax on the ballot, we came together as a group. I think that was a 5-0 vote, wasn't it?
It was not.
Okay, was it 4-1?
I don't remember. I think it might have been 4-1.
Just 4-1.
4-1 vote to place it on the ballot.
well, it was to place it on the ballot with the resolution for what it was going to be used.
That's
Wording.
where I'm going.
Plus the primary ballot. so-
That's where I'm going with.
Right.
And y'all have advertised it, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
In the paper.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone to public meetings, have you not?
Yeah.
And explained it to them. So therefore, they know when they walk into that ballot, to the booth, to vote. It's been out there. I've seen it in the Stokes News 2 or 3 times. I know y'all gone to several town council meetings and club meetings and explained just what they're voting on. So when they go into the booth, whether they've gone in already or next Tuesday, they should have a very good idea of what they're voting on. And that's what I'm getting to here. These people need to have a very good idea of what we are asking for. Do you understand? And at this point, I don't think that they do.
Right.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. I'm done.
So I'm sitting here listening to everybody. I can tell you what I'm hearing on this. I've been to Lawson Royalty meetings, I've been to Sandy Ridge Royalty meetings, I've been in Walnut Cove, been in King. So let me tell you what I'm hearing across the county. Lawsonville says, why don't you put it up here with us? Sandy Ridge saying the same thing. You know, we could use that wellness center. Walnut Cove's big down the door, you know, we can use that wellness center. Well, here's the problem. We can't build 10 wellness centers in the county. Just can't do it. So, and then I got some people in King, not all, but mostly, y'all don't need that up there, you know. So, I mean, no matter what we do right here, if you don't do it, you do it, you're going to make people mad, you're going to make people happy. So, it's kind of, I'm sitting back here and thinking about what Commissioner Yance said. If it's something, then I always kind of look at something, we're going to spend money. Is there a way to bring income back into this county? Make it money well spent. As we've seen, you know, I've got 5 kids. We hit these travel tournaments. It's not cheap going $10, $15 a person to go watch one of these games you play. So, but it does bring in money for that community to help upkeep everything that's going on. So I am more interested in finding out what does the public want.
That's why we're doing a study.
So, of course, you're gonna get 10,000 different answers. So I kind of like to see what the public wants, and maybe in these budget goal sessions coming up, maybe we can put some more stuff together and what we're looking at this and see how far we can go with it. Is everybody good with that? Maybe in these budget goal sessions, kind of see what we want to look into it?
As long as we're not backing up, I'm on board with doing something and trying to show a good faith effort to all the people who want something, regardless of Sandy Ridge, Lawson Valencia. And I did some homework talking to people in Walnut Cove and Danbury and some from Lawsonville. Most of the people I talked with, practically all of them, were comfortable with Meadows. It's not perfect for anybody, but it's a heck of a lot better than driving to King. And that's how they were looking at it, particularly the folks in Walnut Cove. They said, well, I'd rather have it in Walnut Cove, but we can live with that.
Right. Okay. So I guess moving forward, just keep on getting our heads together and get some ideas thrown out there to see what we can.
Do you want this to continually be placed on the discussion agenda, or until you come up with something? Because right now, we're getting nobody that will help us.
Understandably.
And it,
Well,
even
it's
if
like,
it's
what's
just,
your question?
and even if it's just that you want a company to do the survey, I still need a direction to lead them in on what kind of survey you exactly want to do.
Well, it
Once I
sounds
can
like we
answer that.
all definitely want to move forward with this. That's why I kind of brought up the idea of maybe putting it in the budget goal sessions, discussing it then.
And that's not that far away either.
A couple more weeks.
Yeah,
You have a goals session March 5th.
yeah. I think that may be a good idea.
Okay.
What do you think, Commissioner Warren?
Yeah, it's not that far away.
Yeah, it's just next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Just be a difficult survey to generate. I mean, you gotta
No,
figure out
it's
what
not.
to put in it. That's the problem.
I know.
If you had the right survey, you could get the answer and know what to do, but creating that survey is not gonna be too easy, I don't think.
No, it's not.
Well, and you don't want it to be too lengthy, so people just don't want to fill it out,
Right.
but you want it to have enough information.
Short to the
what you
point,
need.
that's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the action agenda.
Get them off your back.
Go ahead to item A, the farmer appreciation resolution. I heard Mr. Booth earlier speak on this right here. Does anybody have any? I'll tell you what, I'll just go ahead and ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Item B, the Cardinal Community Advisory Council appointment request. I'll open the floor for nominations.
Move to close nominations.
Any discussion?
Who, let me kind of catch back up. Who,
The one that was in question was Christina.
Cameron
Or
Ragazzi,
Cameron, yeah.
but you and Commissioner Mendenhall recommended her, so.
He is an educator in the county.
Yep.
and so y'all are comfortable with
Yes.
this person? Fine
Don't
by
ask
me.
me to pronounce your last name.
Make a motion.
Probably spell it out.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the close. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Now poll the board, start with Commissioner Morris.
Morris?
You can do
Oh,
that.
no, the other one.
You do the list as presented, that's fine.
The same, I'll go.
As presented.
The same.
As presented. Moving on now to item C, the Cardinal Regional Health Council appointment request.
Move to close nominations.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. And I'll poll the board. Commissioner Morris?
Same.
Morris.
Morris. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.